Hey,
Okay, 6:01. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting. This is the May meeting of the Danville School Board of Directors. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Before we start the meeting, we're going to go around and just give attendance. We have Tim elsewhere. So Clayton Cargill, the chair of the board. Dave?
Dave Toll, Vice Chair.
Melissa Conley, board member.
Molly?
Molly Gleason, clerk.
Our fifth board member is remote. Tim?
Tim Sanborn.
Superintendent is here as well.
Mark Tucker.
And we have one principal so far. Another one may be coming along the way.
Dave Schilling, middle school and high school.
A few members of the public. and-
Sarah Welch should be on her way.
Show the way. Okay, thanks, everybody. Before we go any further forward, I know that there's an addition to the agenda. And I'll need to, Mark, can you tell us about the addition to the agenda, please?
Yes, Mike Conchessi is going to join us later, so I'd like to request that these things be added to the end of board business. He has an update on the FY22 financial status, just a quick review. Not to steal his thunder, but things are looking good, but I want him to talk about it. And also to report on administration's decision on the awarding of the tax anticipation note, which was approved by the voters in Danville, and Mike's gone through a process to get bids and determine the best overall deal for the SU in the districts in the SU, and he'll report on that. So they're both discussion items, no action required.
No action. Okay, great. I have that down. We'll do that at the bottom of board business. Okay, anybody else have any other additions to the agenda? Hearing none, moving on, we're talking about the April 5th minutes, and we're gonna look to approve them. I know Molly wrote them and rewrote them, and we're working on incorporating the video into the minutes. And so you'll see that in a lot of places where the video has been incorporated into the minutes, so that you go through them online, you can, it will link you straight back to now the video that's also on YouTube. Does anybody have any questions about the minutes or comments about the minutes or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the April 5th, 2022 meeting. I'll take it from the board member.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written for the April 5th meeting.
All right, great. And I'm looking for a second as well.
I will second.
Thank you, David. And all in favor of approving those minutes?
Aye.
I as well. All right, great. Thank you. Now, moving on to administrative reports now, the superintendent put a placeholder in for his, because he's going to get a verbal because we're at the beginning of the month. So I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent for his report. Mark.
Hey, and thank you. Before I start that, just to mention that Larry Fliegelman has joined the meeting. He's the incoming secondary principal.
Oh,
And
great.
he's
Hi,
in the
Larry.
meeting now. So this is the first time in 2 years that there's been nothing in the written report about COVID. Doesn't mean that COVID's gone away. We're still having a few cases here and there, but there's no real, other than dealing with, it's being dealt with as an endemic concern and not a pandemic concern, which doesn't make it any easier for somebody who contracts COVID, but we're not doing testing at school, and we're still providing test kits. We still have a supply of test kits if staff and students need them. Act 173 is going into effect. I am still waiting to see if the legislature is going to delay the implementation of a couple of the rules changes that you heard about from Sabrina Brown last month. The legislation related to pupil implementation of the pupil weighting study was passed by both houses of the Vermont legislature. It was passed by the Senate a couple of weeks ago. The House passed it on Friday. So to my understanding, it's with the governor awaiting his signature. It implements the pupil weighting recommendations from the UVM study, but I believe still does delay the effective date to FY25. The Senate Bill 182, S182 passed and has gone to the governor to sign. They removed, legislature removed the language that was in the draft that would have allowed teachers to break contracts up until right up to June 15th. The biggest change in there is they did make a change to the process under section 1752 that now requires school boards to be involved in decisions for non-renewal, which will be an extra step. It doesn't happen that often, but when in the past non-renewal decisions could be made by the superintendent. Now the board they have to come to the board. That's kind of it. There'll be a miscellaneous education bill passed out before this session ends. It looks like they're trying to get done the end of next week at the latest, and we will see if there's anything substantial that comes out at the very end of the session. But the big things, the only thing that the legislature was working on was some changes to section 706, which was the section that that implemented the Act 46 study process, and they were writing new rules to allow communities in unified districts, some rules for them to follow if they wanted to withdraw from a unified district. Has no impact on Danville because you're not part of a unified district. The only potential impact in CCSU is if one of the 3 towns in Cal Co-op decided they wanted to withdraw from the unified district, and it spells out some clearer rules for doing that, some things that have to be done first before it can go to the state board for approval or disapproval. If it's disapproved by the state board, there's still a path forward. If the community can garner a substantial increase or substantial majority of residents in the town affected towns to agree to the withdrawal of the community that's trying to withdraw. But there was still some debate about what that threshold would be, and that has, to my knowledge, that hasn't been resolved. But that's more for information. It's not anything that affects could or would affect Danville.
Okay, so on that non-renewal thing, if you don't want to renew a teacher, then the board, that there's a potential the board has to be involved in that.
That's my understanding. Yeah, that was the change to 1752. So our CBAs right now say that it's superintendent has authority to non-renew, and now there'll be an extra step in there. I have to bring it to the board. We're not in the business of non-renewing teachers. Happens infrequently, but if it were to come up, it's not going to affect us this year. It doesn't go into effect for this current year, but it would be in effect next year.
Mark, does that apply to probationary teachers as well?
It does not apply to probationary teachers. It applies to any teachers who would have job protection under section 1752.
Anybody in the board have any questions for Mark? This report. Okay, thank you, Mark. Moving on to the principal report. Okay, Sarah's here now, so either Dave or Sarah, whoever wants to go first. We received a written report. We received a written report late last week, and I hope everybody had a chance to read through it. Does anybody have any questions for Dave or Sarah about the report? With that. Yes, sir.
I believe every 2 years we put funding for Nature's Classroom in the budget. Is that right?
Yeah, Nature's Classroom is worked into the budget under, it's not a separate, we don't talk about it as a separate board, but when Karen was here, she wrote that into a line, a professional services line. So that
Okay.
has been-
Because of the discussion before, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, there's a chunk in there does not cover the whole cost of it, especially when we get into years like this, we're sending 3 grades at a time because we skipped a year, but it encompasses.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did a lot of fundraising on that one. So
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen a normal nature classroom here. Here we go again.
Yeah, so, yeah. Okay, what are the chances, Friday look good to go? The community event,
Looks good.
so
Yeah.
for right now,
We're
looking
excited.
good.
We're excited
Everyone's
about it.
gonna go up.
We hope people will
Excited
join
for it
us.
as well.
Lots going on as far as seniors presenting their projects, unveiling the mural.
Right.
A lot of good stuff. And we're thankful for the community support.
All right, once.
We'll talk about it.
Back here to this one. Anybody have any questions? Anybody else have any questions for Dave? If not, we're gonna go to the student services report, which is also in the packet. Came in last week. Mark, do you want to tell us about the new hire? Since it's in the student services report, like, it's in the student services report, we hired a new occupational therapist. There's no, it's in the report, so you can read about it. That's a CCSU level hire, and that got approved at the meeting last week.
Yeah,
CCSU level hire. We hired one to replace one. If you have, how about, if anybody has any questions about the hire, they can send them, they can email them tomorrow. It is in the report.
As I look at that report too, we're talking about hiring SLPs. I just want to highlight that we are grateful that one of the SLPs who's leaving is not at Danville.
It's good.
We've got a great SLP here and we're excited she's staying with us.
That's good here. So moving on from student services, student reps. I know Thomas in the report, he's not here. Ava Marshy's here.
Ava's here.
Ava, would you like to speak to us about your report?
Sure, I'm at my grandmother's and she doesn't have a camera on her computer, so I can just do the voice thing. Do you want me to go over all of it or highlights or?
So it looked like you had a lot of exciting business, and we like to hear exciting business. So why don't you give us a couple minutes, Ava?
Awesome.
Let us know what's going on in school.
Yeah, so my report this month is just some exciting stuff coming up and some exciting things that have happened. We have a new National Art Honor Society chapter at our school. Students submitted applications to Miss Bartel to be considered for acceptance into this chapter, and this group has a lot of exciting things planned for the rest of this year and next year. Just bringing some great art into the community. I'm super excited to see where that goes. We now have a club ultimate frisbee team that practices during club time at school, and we actually have our first game, technically a scrimmage, but against LI May 11th. So that's super exciting. We have an arts festival right now at Danville. Our artist in residence is Chi Chi, and she's working with students all grade levels throughout the school. We're working on the banner, and she's been teaching the kids some really great art techniques and things like that. I've heard nothing but great things from the kids. And when they walk by and see high schoolers working on some stuff with the banner, they always stop, and just some great words coming from the younger kids and the older kids. It's been so much fun to work on. NHS induction is coming right up. It will be in June. And more details for that will be coming out soon. 2 students are heading up to the All-State Music Festival this Thursday. I know we've been hard at work at getting ready for that, and we're excited to go perform. It's Zoe and I. Softball and baseball are in full swing. Softball is doing great. Baseball is doing really good this season. Both teams have been working really hard at that. Luke St. Marie, Pascal Depish, and Katie McElhenney have been participating in track and field. Their last meet was at South Burlington High School, and their next meet is in North Country. Finals week is coming up. Students have been hard at work finishing out their school year strong. I know that the college end of semester for most of our classes is May 6th. So a lot of students have been taking their finals for those classes. Community night is this Friday. Seniors will be presenting their senior projects, and the banner will be revealed. There'll also be food and music. So yeah, just some really exciting stuff coming up for the end of the year.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Do you have any questions for Ava? Thank you very much, Ava.
Thank you.
So moving on to board business, we have building plan on the agenda. And so What we don't currently have a lot to discuss past what we discussed in the last month. One of the things that we're going to do tonight is we have some people here that are interested in it, and they asked for this to be an agenda item, and they had some questions. And I don't know if you guys have any further questions from what I from what we discussed in the email. But if you do, you're sort of focus grouping a little bit some of our our questions and our skepticism. So what we're gonna be doing is working towards some community outreach. And so some of the stuff that we have to do is we have to figure out how we can show this to people and how we can make them understand what is wrong. And one of the things that was in your email was the question of unsafe versus deficient. And so I hope I clarified that in a way. But some of the things that you do, and some of the work that gets started, some of the work that has to be done, what we need. So what I'd like to do is open up to you guys that are here. We have four members of the public here, and Rob Balabate's here as well. If any of you have any questions, and I may not have the answer, if this makes sense, we may not have all the way the answer, but if you have a question and we write it down, then we can put that in our answers to sort of get, because just like you guys, many community members can have questions because we're all in the sticker shock phase of what we have here, and we have to figure out what our path forward is. So I'm opening this one up to public discussion for the questions, and anybody online can raise their hand. You guys can just raise your hand, and we'll try to take down your questions.
Yeah, so the safety piece came from, I believe it was one of the engineers had mentioned. There were two big things that we wanted to bring the campus into the 21st century and to make it safe. And so I kind of stuck on that. I was, well, what's unsafe? And so I'm guessing maybe the lead pipes, leaching in time, but I think maybe there was some confusion on that. It's not worth saying that
No.
children are safe here. It was just, I was sticking on that word that I heard from one of the gentlemen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Lance, very good. Thank you. Can you just identify yourself before speaking? I know.
Oh, sorry,
obviously,
Lance Horn.
So I'm calling on Lance Horn first. I'm speaking to Lance Horn for the record.
Right, for the record.
For the record, I'm speaking to Lance Horn.
I can move this a little bit too, so we can all see each other a little better.
Yeah, sorry. I just picked the table.
No, that's what it's.
So specific to
So it was that, so I think, I just wanted to clarify what I was asking.
It's a good question.
It was just
That's a great
what I
question.
heard.
It was a good question.
So,
And I can speak a little bit to some of that too.
So some of the things it's not lead pipes, it's lead solder on the pipes. And prior to 1986, it was perfectly legal in any building in Vermont to solder your pipes with lead, and that's a plumbing thing. And then after that, they stopped that. So that lead and the solder, but in the compression it leaches in. We do lead testing on a regular basis, and we had a couple of years ago where, and I'm sure you recall, you got the emails, is we said this one's off, we replaced a bunch of fixtures, but it's going to happen again. So when you get into a situation where you say this building needs to be renovated and you open up those walls, every pipe that's in there prior to 1986, good or not, it's got to come out.
That's right. Okay.
And so, and then when you have those walls open, what's also in that is old heating pipes. Old heating pipes on them will have on them more than likely the stuff that was used in the 50s.
Yep.
And so that's all got to come out. And so when you and none of the building is the sprinklers. And so then you're retrofitting sprinklers into this building. And so when Cam Featherstone gave us the number of what would it take, and he spitballed this number for us, what would it take to take the whole building apart and put it back together just as it is, except 21st century standards and safe? He ballparked that on the fly at $32 million, something like that. But he was not given that as a quote because it didn't solve any of our problems. And so the unsafe question is, it's unsafe once you crack it open. And so if we start getting into that, then we're disrupting the classrooms, and then we'll have to do asbestos abatement, have to do other sorts of abatement in that way. And so that is one of the challenges that we have. How can we in this building move forward and make this building safe? And even in doing that, and this is one of the things that we talked about in that email, even in doing that, if we took this building all the way apart and put it back together, it doesn't address the whole reason that we called these engineers in the first place, which was we don't have enough space. And there's a couple of spots in here I would love to show you, but I'm just going to tell you about one while I got you here. My son, when he was 7 years old, used to run and he would fall over all the time, fall over all the time. I got a call from the occupational therapist that works here, and she said, I need to work with him. And he was doing occupational therapy. And I was in one time, he was doing the occupational therapy, and I looked at where he was doing it. And he was doing it in the hallway next to the elevator on the second floor by the second grade classrooms. And that is not a good place necessarily to be doing occupational therapy, and they had a shower curtain up. But the kicker on that is, that's actually Mrs. Mundinger's office. Like, they had kicked an entire other person who does interventions out of that office, so that this float, it's basically a float, could use the space. And so when we talk about space concerns, we talk about some of the private stuff, some of the stuff that should be confidential, who's going in there. And my kid's behind a shower curtain. And all he was doing was walking backwards to the wall. It wasn't that big of a deal. He wasn't ashamed or anything.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, I'm not challenging.
Oh, no,
the need. I mean, my wife works at the Peach.
Yeah, no, I'm just-
School, and she's in special needs as well, and they say the same thing. I mean, as far as like sensory rooms and things like this, fully sensitive to that. It was just $32.5 million of the 60 to 70 million is to bring this up. I guess you answered my question, you spitballed it. I'd be curious if someone would really get into a database like that, a contractor would do, and kind of really line, because their report for 2020 was pretty detailed. You can see where, the cracks and cement, and pointing that you
Yeah, for sure.
bricks and sagging tiles, and I think it'd be really interesting to see, since that's such a large number, obviously.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll let Dave speak a little bit.
That first number, that 32 million to essentially the make good number, is one thing that yours calls only fans. And it's a little more than spitballing. It is based on the 2020 report that they came in and they brought in several engineers. And what that basically does is they say, if you were to contract with somebody simply to bring your building up to current code. So that number is, it's a step above spitball. The key part to highlight is, if you spend that 32 million, it doesn't mean you can just then if you just add on to it, you get to, there's still contractors' costs that would be in that 32 million, that would also be in a larger number to address your space needs. So that's what that number is. They always provide a make good number based on essentially what happens when you first crack into your building. So like if we were to add on one classroom, essentially if we were to add on one classroom right now to the side of the library, that would trigger a lot of those code issues. That would trigger the fact that we have to sprinkle the whole building to continue.
Mr. Shelley,
Yeah.
can you speak up a little?
Yeah,
bit?
sure. That would trigger, code issues such as building has to be brought up to sprinkler code. You have sprinklers in like 2 seconds of the building. The building is not. Unfortunately, the last big renovation was done in 1989. ADA came into effect in 1990. So there's like certain doorways, for example, that just weren't already accessible at the time that a year later were out of code. So that's what that original number is.
It just seems like, I guess some of the question, like, you look at this beautiful school, and last meeting I had asked you guys, and there don't seem to be any structural issues, and it's good to get more of a sense. You sent that, Clayton, thank you. I saw the video that was sent about the whole sort of breakdown of oh yes, Allison Despathy, for the record, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so essentially it's, you have this beautiful Vermont brick school building that is structurally sound. I understand that number, but then I also want to put in perspective the fact that what the past 2 years have been like for everyone. There have been people without jobs, there have been people without incomes, there have been people collecting unemployment. We have massive inflation that's happening right now. And I understand it's like, when is there a good time? There's probably never a good time,
Right.
But the question really is like, PECs exist. You wouldn't have to remove, like PECs could be put in, and I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just wondering if he's throwing out $32 million, what is that based upon? Has there actually been someone in here to say, you've got this structurally sound, beautiful Vermont brick building, what could be done to it? And could there be an addition that makes sense? Like, and I know maybe, and I could be remembering this incorrectly, so correct me if I'm wrong. Last meeting, there was some conversation, for some reason, Molly, I remember you saying this maybe, okay, $10 million difference between fix it, build an addition versus $10 more million, which is still $10 million, you get a whole brand new 21st century boom building. So, is that a real number? What are we working with? And is there a real cost analysis that has been done on this existing structurally sound building and could it be done over some time? Like, okay, there needs to be an addition. Just one last thought, you sort of finish one last thought, sorry. Like, I understand the need for room, I respect that. makes sense, obviously, but over time, like, okay, could you be dealing with plumbing? Could you be dealing with this, like, on a year-to-year basis? Like, here's some income versus like slamming the community. Because there was a lot, I don't know the names name up there, but there was a lot of like, we have to present this in the right way. And I understand you guys want to see it happen, but what is best for the community to be able to stay here, afford taxes, et cetera? You know, so the big picture of it.
So Dave, do you want to answer that or want me to answer?
Okay. At the end of the day, the question is, we have to find something to come together on the community, as a community. Because it's got to come to a vote, right? So your vote is a statement, is a community statement. Yes, we have to present it in a way that's appealing, but we also have to be realistic, and we have to have these exact type of community conversations. I can send you a copy of it's somewhere on the board website from a while ago.
I
but
think
can-
I saw it.
Well, was it the couple 100-page report?
The
Is that what
one
you're talking
that
about?
talked about like all the issues from a safety standpoint, like what needed to happen.
So basically, a team of a mechanical engineer, a structural engineer, a civil engineer, 2 architects, and a couple other members of that team came through and basically did a full site assessment. That was followed by landscape architects coming through and doing another assessment. That's all in that document report. So that speaks to your question about
And is there a cost attached to that?
the make good cost of the 30 whatever million number came specifically out of that.
And that when you call it like a spitball number. like
No, that's a misspeak by me. He's clarifying.
That's just
Yeah, I
in-
wish you had said that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
wanna
so-
retract that.
Let me just put that on the record.
I want to retract that.
So
Okay, good. So he
Yeah.
basically, that analysis was done, obviously in detail, and this was the Truex guy who put the number, attached the number to that.
Right, so what Truex does is then Truex retains a cost estimate. Essentially, their entire job is to estimate projects. So they take a look at that report, they take a look at the deficiencies in there, they take a look at the square footage of the building. And they take a look at the construction materials that would have been used in 1934, 1957,
Yeah.
1969, and 1989.
Mhm.
And then what they give Truex back is an estimate of what it would take to do what was listed in that report. Understanding these are the materials they're likely to run into. They also looked at our asbestos records, they looked at the work.
That was my other question. Is there indeed asbestos in here? I wasn't sure if that was a certain.
Every building of this age has asbestos somewhere. We've been up to date with our asbestos abatement plan and records, so we know exactly where it is. And there's not actually a lot. This building does not have a lot of asbestos compared to a building of its age. We've worked on in the past to make that better. So they look at where we actually stand. Look at what's already been done. For example, the heating coil system that cost about $800,000 last year to make the air handlers work.
I know, see, and that's what's like mind-boggling about like the investments of like, a lot of these investments have happened, so.
But that's also the tricky part of this. You're talking about $700,000-$800,000 Band-Aids that don't actually really fix the problem. They're still 35-year-old air handlers on the roof that can be used for the first time because the solution a decade ago was to shut them off. That was a really, I can't speak enough to the fact that was a pretty bad decision. I'm not gonna who made it, I don't know how it happened.
Right.
But the fact that when we got to this point where here we are in a pandemic and there is no air circulation in the building, that was a pretty shocking realization that something had to change. So some of these are, but then again, I guess that's the big question. When we try to address the spacings as well, we try to realize that we are at space, that we have people in closets. I think Clayton gave one example of OC, but that's one of about 50. Our middle school guidance counselor right now is occupying a room the size of like those 2 black chairs. We have a lot of interior rooms and high school English classroom.
You guys are making it happen.
We're making it happen, but we also can't do anything else with it. We can't add on. If we wanted to add on more high school programming, I'm putting myself in New York next year.
And I know that was a great idea. The Truex crew, so they are also the architects. So he gave the number for his sort of cost analysis of the fix. And then he's also the architect. So he would also be building the new sort of like designing the new school as well. Is that true?
So Truex is the architect. You start with an architect, and then that architect branches out to engineering firms, cost estimation firms. et cetera.
Right. No, I get
But
that.
essentially,
also.
essentially they take
But
on the
he
role
would
of
be
GC
doing the design of the new building.
if they were selected.
Yeah.
So their job right now is to take us through this process that would get us to potential bond. Mark, stop me if I'm saying the wrong things here, by the way. I mean, don't yet, 'cause I think I'm right. Just don't, but Truex would, essentially, where we are right now is they take us up to a bond. Once the bond vote happens, based on the conceptual, what the concept looks like and what the community approves, then it has to go out to bid again. So Truex doesn't guarantee, they're not guaranteed to be, it's not like they're building their own thing.
Yeah, well, that's what one of the
I think we
concerns, of course. But the
yeah.
other piece is has anyone else besides Truex done a cost analysis? Like, is that the only number, the only person you've got a number from on that 32 mil?
We reached out to 3 architecture firms at the very beginning of this process. We reviewed the records, we reviewed the references. One was Black River Designs, who had previously done some additions to this building. One was, the second one, Truex was the third one. Truex was the one who came the most highly recommended to us based on other school projects in Vermont, based on the comprehensive nature of what they could provide. And so generally, when you do a process like this, you pick one. If you go out and get 3 cost estimates for this, you're talking about $60,000 times 3.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Huge, right.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody, and again, Mark's hands up. Go for it.
Mark, please.
So I think everybody's asking some really good questions here, but I think we'd have a severe case of premature precision going on. The progression of a project like this starts from, conversations internally in the board about the condition of the building, an effort to identify somebody who could help us to figure out what the problems and opportunities are. There was a request for proposals that went out to, we talked to 3 different architectural firms. We selected Truex Cullen. The board contracted with them to come in and do some initial evaluation. That was started and then paused because we ran into the problem with because of COVID with the air ventilation. We had to pause and fix the fact that there was no indoor air ventilation in the wintertime in the building. That got fixed. We went back into conceptual design, and what was presented to the board at the last meeting was some professional suggestions on different paths that Danville could take in order, if it wants to resolve the concerns that have been raised about the school building or buildings. It's actually multiple buildings. And one of them was just fix the existing building and don't do anything else. That's the roughly that's a $32 million solution that gets us what we have now, but up to code. There was another design concept which involves, putting an addition onto the building and renovating the existing structure, and that came in around 70 or 71 million projected costs. And then the third was, and the third possibility is build a new structure on another part of the campus and then move the school into that new structure when it's done and take down everything except the historical high school building that fronts Route 2. We don't know until we do our community engagement. We don't know which of those alternatives, if any, are going to appeal to the larger community. And that's why we are working on starting up a process to gather that community input. There have been no decisions made on what the best route is. I think I was quoted in a newspaper after the last board meeting as saying there's really 4 options. The 4th one being don't do anything, but not doing anything is a extremely risky proposition because we have internal systems, plumbing and things like that, electrical in the existing building that are eventually going to fail over time, and then we're going to be looking at costly repairs. So I think these questions are all good, but the reason we don't have the answers is we don't know what the community wants to do. If there's strong public sentiment to renovate the existing building and do nothing else, then maybe that's what we'll go forward with. If it's to build an addition and renovate the existing building, we'll go down that path or build a new building. But the point being is that we're working off of estimates. They're ballpark or range estimate, educated ballpark estimates of what it would cost to renovate the existing building and put some additional space on, or build an entirely new building. Once we get direction from the community about which of those 3 options are most appealing, there will be more detailed analysis and costing and all that. So all these questions about, has this been costed out, and is this are these spitball numbers or real numbers or whatever, we will get there, but we need some guidance from the community first. So as Clayton said, yeah, keep asking the questions, and we're documenting the questions that people are asking, but it feels a little bit like we're going down a rabbit hole around things that we don't have answers to, because we don't know which of those options is going to make the most sense for the Danville community. And, I live in Danville and pay taxes in Danville. So I have an interest as superintendent responsible for the school, but I also have a big interest as a taxpayer who's going to have to fund part of whatever gets done for the Danville school. So, I'm thrilled that people are speaking up and asking questions, but we don't have all of the detailed answers yet.
Mark, can I add one just a quick clarification onto that? Which is that as the administrative team who has been looking at this, who has been starting with this project, I don't think that anybody would be bringing forth a recommendation to the community to simply renovate the existing building, because the whole reason we're here is the space issue. The question is going to be what part of this solves the space need, but also works with how buildings are built. But I think that, if there was this like big community sentiment that we just needed to like renovate and pretty up this building but not change it, there's no need, there's no reason.
And what I would say is that what we don't want, the other thing that we don't want to do is move from $1 million emergency to $1 million emergency. This is part of planning, is you can't go into this and say, if we leave everything the way it is, we'll hope nothing happens, because if something happens, that's $1 million right now emergency that you haven't planned for, that there is no bond for. We ran into that with the heating systems, and we were rescued with grants in a lot of ways. With the money, it wasn't a significant spend, but we had an authorization. We were going to have to come to the voters and say we need $700,000 nearly immediately to fix this thing so that we could open the school in that first pandemic year. So with our planning, we want to try to move forward and have an idea of how we can get this to be a 21st century building without putting strain on the town that they don't expect, without having to come in an emergency situation and fix something that is long past its life that we've known about. And that's about where we are.
I just had one last question, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. Oh, you did as well?
Okay, so I'll start with who had their hand up first. Do you guys want to, I'll go with Lance first. I'm looking right at him.
So this is Lance. My intent, Mark, isn't to go down a rabbit hole. I'm just going through personal discovery, because I haven't been as intimate with it as you all have. So I've got a lot of the answers to what I was looking for. The 200-page document is probably going to give you most of the answers. So I'll find that. It's a big number. Obviously, I'm just trying to understand and get my head wrapped around it. The last question I had was regard to one of my questions to Clayton was regarding some of the funds, trying to get us above our 50%, our current sort of our test scores in the state of Vermont being as low as they are compared to other Vermont schools. What could we, is there something, and this is probably more a marker or a Mr. Schilling question, is there something that we could be putting funds toward or ask the town for funds toward either curriculum, is it training, is it, how do we make what we've got better?
Sure,
Meaning
Sam, my answer to you was personnel. And then,
but you said adding personnel, but do we necessarily have to add some personnel in some areas? Maybe is there, and I don't know, this is why I'm asking, are there things that we can do with our current personnel to give them a bigger toolbox?
And I think there is. I think these two discussions don't. I don't see this as one or another piece. I think that, Sarah Welch's hand is up, and she has made some very significant curriculum improvements and redirects in the elementary school. I don't think that this is necessarily, we have to do this or this. I think that, it's a big picture of what we want to do in school. So I want to defer to Sarah.
Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Dave said, it's not an either or thing. It's part of it is, yes, adding personnel. But like thinking of the piecing very specifically, like with interventionists and being able to provide more literacy and math intervention supports. I have nowhere to put them. I mean, it is truly, we can get people, but also becomes a spacing issue. I mean, if you come through the halls during the day, they're sitting on the floor. And they're great with that and they're fine with that. And that supports beyond tier one. And then the other piece, like Dave said, is really looking at shifting and better establishing some of our curriculum within elementary school. In talking with the teachers, it's not been an area that's had as much administrative direction, and giving that the attention it needs is focusing from preschool and kindergarten on up and unifying some of that curriculum on up. And so making those shifts as well doesn't automatically add people or add space, but it's a combination of all of those components.
At the middle school and high school level, or speaking of the high school level, the position I'm taking on next year, to me, is specifically about outcome. Test scores don't measure students' success. So to me, the measure of the success of the high school program is if students are well placed for post-secondary opportunities, whether that's in the trades, whether it's college, wherever they're going, they need to have a strong test scores that they need to give them. So there's a lot. I'd say there's a lot of programming talk and there's a lot of curriculum talk completely outside of this process.
Yeah.
But it is tough when you talk about small group intervention areas.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want
Right. Thank you, Allison.
Okay.
Again.
Alex, hold on. Mark,
Yeah, sorry.
the superintendent has a hand up.
Oh, sure.
Mark, can you go ahead?
Yeah, just, so I wanted to speak to this question about the standing or scoring of the students. There's a conceptual framework in Vermont education called the multi-tiered system of support. And the SU has been looking at our practices around MTSS for all of this school year in a project that that was supported by my office, and it is impacting all 7 schools in the SU. We are continuing to do that work, and we'll be working on that into the summer and into the next several school years to improve the instructional practices wherever they need to be improved in each of the schools in the SU. And I say that way because we know from the work that we've done so far is that there are the things that you need to do to improve instruction in Danville are not exactly the same things that you need to do to improve instruction in Waterford or Barnet or Peachum or Twinfield or Cabot. Okay, so what we've been working on this year is understanding what the framework is that we need to have in place so that we can first identify where the strengths are in each of the schools, and then more specifically in terms of action, where there are challenges that we need to put resources and time and additional teacher training with the staff that we have now to improve their teaching practices, all of which is pointed towards improving the outcomes for students. So we haven't talked about that a lot this year because we don't quite have the framework completely developed. We will be bringing this to the district board meetings over the next few months as we finish up kind of the first phase of identifying what the task ahead is. And so what we're going to report to the Danville board will be, there'll be some commonality in each of the district reports, but then some specific Danville recommendations that, this is how this applies or affects Danville school, and what we say about Waterford, Twinfield, et cetera, will be slightly different. So I hear what you're saying about, concerns of student outcomes, and, we're especially concerned coming after, 2 years of pandemic. And, we developed recovery plans to be implemented this year that we didn't get to because the pandemic continued and got in the way. And so we're, looking to starting some of that work that we thought we were going to do in September of last year when we come back to school in the fall. So there's going to be a lot going on in that area in terms of improving instruction and improving learning opportunities for students. So, my message to the board is to stay tuned for some more detailed reporting from myself and from the principals around that work, because it's going to be the critical work. It's driven in part by changes to special education funding that are making us really sharpen or resharpen our focus on tier 1 instruction. And tier 1 is the classroom instruction that every student gets on a daily basis. But there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of activity around that. And, you know, I have all my fingers and toes crossed that we won't be distracted again next year by an extension of the pandemic or some other thing that we didn't see coming and couldn't plan for.
Thank you, Mark. One last go, and then I'm ready to move on, because like you said, with a lot of premature precision, I like that to understand where we are.
Yep, this is
Alice.
just my last addition. This is Alice again. So I know you guys are talking about there's these three sort of options that you're talking about presenting to the community, but I'm also just wondering, is there any, I don't think one of them involves just, if the most urgent aspect at this point is space, and you were to do the addition to cover obviously all the space needs that everyone is talking about and seem like they really need to happen, obviously, then could that happen? And then if the other things are not urgent, is there a way that that could potentially be set up to be addressed for the existing school building as time goes, et cetera, et cetera? Is that one of the options? Could that be one of the options? Again, I'm thinking about taxes for the community to be able to afford to stay here with everything going on. And the other aspect to that is when and if, well, I'm sure you will, but when you will know how much money you have to allocate to the plan, whatever it may be, and what the specific impact on taxpayers are going to be, because I'm sure that will have some influence on community decision as well, because that's a big deal.
So that's a lot of questions and a lot of
Yeah.
details.
So
And
the two things mean.
I'm gonna take all those questions and just leave them hanging, because we don't have any of the answers today.
So the fourth one, I would just say, if there was a consideration on building the new space and seeing could the other projects be chipped away? And then the other one, just, it would be at some point when you guys have the information, really good to be able to present to the community, this is what you could potentially look at if we need to increase education tax.
Yeah, I think any final decision on this after, this level of community conversation is going to come with a projected tax impact. That's how that is.
Okay, cool.
It's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you say something
Yeah, I
more?
was just gonna say, the architects mentioned coming up with estimates about, with income sensitivity with the taxes, that not everybody would be paying the same amount, and they were gonna come up with some examples of, if you have a $300,000 house, here's an estimate of what this person would be paying. I didn't know, Mark, is that something that they've gotten in touch with you about, or is that still, wait at a later date likely?
That's going to be an important consideration for everybody in town that votes on, and this eventually goes to bond, as I hope it will. It'll be part of the part of what we present to the voters. What is the impact of this going to be? Because it will, the taxpayers in Danville will be responsible for paying a portion of the cost of this project based on whether they're residential taxpayers or non-residential taxpayers. And I touched on that briefly at the last board meeting, that it's not 100% of it falls on the residential taxpayers. The percentage, the ratio of who pays what shifts from year to year. So I don't want to be pinned down and say, well, you told us it was going to be 39% or 35%. But it's the fact of the matter is, in the current ed funding system, the way the taxes are raised, the different constituencies contribute different amounts towards the education taxes. So, but we don't know how much it's going to be. And so it's way, way, way too early for me to even, I wouldn't venture a guess on, you're a hypothetical person in a $300,000 house, how much additional property tax they would have to pay to do this project. But that will have to be, and that'll be when we know what's been recommended to the board, what the board has decided to recommend to the community, what we've gone to the funding sources, bond bank or whoever, USDA, to fund. We will know those numbers. And as a taxpayer, I want to know, what's my share of this going to be as a residential taxpayer in Danville? I'm very, very interested in this.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So I think that we're in a position now where we're going to move on. We're talking a lot of things. We need some more detail, and we'll be circling back to that often. And we're going to be looking on the lookout for some community engagement as we go on. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment procedure. and that's mostly me. We talked about this quite a bit at the last meeting about the public comment webinar that we all went to, and moving forward with some guidelines for public comment so that we can, we were in a period of relative calm, and then we were going to have some guidelines for relative comment so that we could make sure that people were heard, and that the people that were heard were generally stakeholders. And I've written something up and I'm looking for it now. And I think I'm gonna have to be asked to share my screen. So can somebody make it possible for me to share my screen, and then can somebody teach me how to share my screen?
Sure. All right, I can do the make it possible piece. And I'll help you
Okay,
with the teaching.
I'm sure it's just a button. isn't it?
There we go to-
Oh, not yet.
Yeah, you see where it is, you just push that. wherever you do it. Let's disable it.
I'm disabled.
Oh, he's gotta be enabled.
Oh, Mark, you're the only one. You're the only one who can let Clayton share a screen. So I do that. Says host, not co-host.
Hi.
There you go.
I have to knock the zoom down and then share it.
Put whatever you want. Do you have your document up already?
Yeah.
And then in there, push that, then you push that green button and then go to your document. Yeah, there you go.
All right, so what I'm looking at here, now, someone have to big this up. Do I have the capacity to big it up, or does somebody
Yeah,
else?
like
wanna-
you would normally, just in that corner, the right, to the, like you would any other time, like over in your right-hand corner
Oh,
up
I know,
top.
at the beginning, you know.
Go up higher.
All right, show me.
There, Dave's got
All
it.
right,
It's the end of it.
Up there with the
that's the, yeah. Somebody else. There we go. Okay.
just pinch it around.
Okay, so I'll do it like that. So some of this, the table up here came from the CCSD. This came, Mark Tucker sent us this from the CCSD meeting, and this is some, just some conduct rules for the meeting, and this applies a lot to the board. And this is on the agenda of every, this is on every CCSD agenda, and I thought it looked good, and Molly looked at it as well. And this is just some of the expectations for board members to go for it. And some of it, honor confidentiality, don't say kid names, assume good intentions, start the meetings on time. That's obviously, and come prepared, right? And everyone gets an opportunity to speak before the second turn, so that nobody in here is dominating the conversation. And that would apply to me as well. And somebody learn how to make that noise and tell me to zip it sometimes. And so we wanted to add that to the top of every agenda. And then downward for the public comment, what we were talking about was how we had been beset a little bit by people who were not stakeholders in Danville. And so we had to somehow define the stakeholders and then figure out the public comment procedure for stakeholders. And I think that I've got, so what I have here is a way, and the top part, the part that's in black here where it says the purpose of the agenda items is to provide the general public with an opportunity to address the board on matters not warned on the agenda. Neither the board nor the administration will discuss the matter beyond any necessary steps, such as referring the matter to the appropriate individual group and or offering clarification. The board may decide to add items raised in public comment to a future agenda. That is also from the CCSD. And then what I was proposing, so that is something that was given to us by the superintendent as a way to guide public comment towards what we'd like, and to put a little bit of a constraint on public comment. I was suggesting, and this is to be workshop, this is to be discussed here. My thought was public input on non-agenda items at board meetings is limited to stakeholders. And then further to define stakeholders, I wanted to define stakeholders as students, parents, teachers, and residents of Danville, Vermont. And then past that, I wanted to say to non-stakeholders, while your comments are welcome, they should come to us via email. And then I gave my email address there, the email address of the board chair. Comments are directed at the chair, and they're limited to 3 minutes, so that there's no, we had the one incident where the man was being very accusatory and he was speaking directly at the superintendent, which is not the way this is supposed to work. So I was proposing that those things also get added to the bottom of it, so that somebody looking at the agenda would then understand where we're coming from, and we could, to a degree, limit some of the outside interference that we were having. And I'd like to open that up for board discussion. If anybody has any thoughts.
I just had that one question about whether we're legally allowed to define stakeholders in a public forum.
So
Whether-
in that webinar, we were told that that webinar was done by Pietro Lynn. He was a guest, he was a panelist. Oh, he was a panelist. Mark, you want to answer this question, or did you have something to say besides this?
Well, I had a couple things to say. The
I'm
ground
gonna give you
rules were
Molly's question
developed.
too.
Oh, okay, Molly's question. Yes, you are allowed to do that. The boards are allowed to set standards for public comment, and public comment is it's perfectly allowable to limit public comment to citizens who are affected by the actions of the board. And by definition, that is the people that Clayton listed in that list. So the teachers, students, staff, and residents of Danville in this case.
Tim, please.
I just think it's really important if we're going to add norms to our meetings that we actually sit down and develop those together. I think that's the way norms usually come out. And then additionally, if looking just at that table of norms, I'm seeing like a repeat one about being open to asking clarifying questions, but also asking clarifying questions. But then even in talking about it, you had already sort of added one about just being prepared before the meeting starts and having read the documents that were provided for us. I think that's a bigger question and not just a let's just add norms to the top of our meeting.
Sure.
But I think that we should add that as an agenda item and talk about what are our norms that we would have, what are our expectations we have for each other before we sort of.
So that's generally something. That's generally something when we talk in the reorganizational meetings about a board retreat, and then at the board retreat, you talk to amongst yourselves without items on the agenda about your shared values and about what your goals are for your board. And we haven't scheduled one of those, like I said. So what we may have to do is schedule a board retreat where we talk about that and where this is, and we would have this as a discussion item there, but not as an action item, and then bring it back as an action item to a regular board meeting. So I'm proposing this for discussion, and then what I think that everybody can do is everybody can take this home and then mark it up and then see if you have any input on it, and then submit that as a meeting document for the next meeting, and we'll see where we go. Or maybe we can send it all to one central location and then look at it as a group. We can't work on it separately, obviously. We can't work on it outside the meetings, but we can work on it. We can either schedule a retreat or work on it.
Right,
Tim?
and I don't think establishing norms takes that long of a time. I think when you start talking about values and things beyond that, that's true. I do think it's something we could do within a regular meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it is important that we really unpack those more before we adopt norms that were developed by another group.
Okay, so they talk.
Yeah, I think it's important that we be able to see it and review it and come up with our comments and questions. We can't discuss it unless we're a full group, but that we can at least see it and be prepared with questions or comments or adjustments.
Okay, that'd be great. So do you guys want to just put this on the next agenda and then look at it, and then we'll have we'll take some input and take some notes? Does that sound good to everybody?
That sounds great.
All right, I'm gonna call that consensus and move on. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is gym equipment. And so the gym equipment we discussed at the last meeting, and it came in late, it came in as an on the day agenda item, and we couldn't act on it, but we discussed it at length just the same. And it's possible for anybody visiting from the Danville website. This is on the meeting documents from the previous meeting, and it's also in the minutes. So I think the link to is there, but the proposals are on, they're inside the unapproved minutes from last time. We had 3 proposals for the board to consider. And it was winches and basketball backtops, a batting cage, and a curtain. There's 3 various things, and they are for And there was, as I recall, there was no significant objection to any of these things then, and this was summer work that we had planned. And does anybody have any questions about these things this time? Dave, you want to give me further information, or do you think that we have the full information since we spoke at length?
I think you have the full information. I think it's going to recap a couple of questions that came up. One was, are we when we're talking about all this facility stuff, where are we looking at the gym? And the answer to that was, the gym is the least touched piece of this whole plan. Whatever we do, the gym's going to be the gym. The equipment is easily transferable over to anything else. The other question that came up was just about necessity. And again, I think this was something that we were looking to do pre-COVID, and we had approved to do pre-COVID, and then COVID happened. But these are some pretty, again,
Right.
we talked about, I'm just going to rehash everything.
That's fine.
But basically, that's where we are. I don't think that needs to be.
Okay. Right. This is limiting our ability to have our kids engage in sports, and
Right.
This is,
the two backboards that came off of the fixed wall board installed. Correct. To begin with.
okay. So, are there any other questions from the board on this? Is everybody clear on what we're doing here?
Have confirmed again with Mike Kachesi that he believes that your unrestricted surplus funds are the best place to. That's good.
Okay, so we're gonna focus on unrestricted surplus funds.
You're looking at saving or waiting on the new bleachers until,
Bleachers are already approved.
The bleachers have been approved.
Bleachers and painting. That's
Okay,
done.
good.
A long time ago.
Yeah, those should be
So
going in the bleacher June.
Yeah, so it's more summer work, and so it looks like a significant revamp of the gym in the summer if we move to approve these as well, but there's already gonna be work in the gym, whether we approve this or not. And so what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for a motion or not a motion to approve winches and basketball backstops for not to exceed 30,504, a batting cage for 18,832, and a curtain for softball for 18,169 out of unrestricted funds for a total of not to exceed 67,505. And if I can get a motion, we can discuss it further.
the curtain is to divide the gym,
Correct.
because they can use the batting cage for softball.
Oh, yeah.
too, but
Yep. The curtain is supposed to divide the gym.
I move to approve all three, effective separately.
So I think that you can move to approve these three purchases for a total of each of these numbers for a total not to exceed 67,505. We want to put all these numbers into the motion.
Yes, I have to actually say everything, right? So we get it.
Yeah, I've said it.
So we're good.
So if you
I will
tell-
move to approve of the three proposals. Will that be enough for you?
that is acceptable because you agree to the motion. And so I'll look for a second to see if we have any further discussion. I'll take the second from Melissa. Does anybody have any
Second.
further discussion on this matter? Tim? Are you trying to get your second in? Or do you have discussion? He's good, okay. And so this is a money spin, so this was gonna go open to the public for a second. Does the public have anything to say about these purchases?
I think it's great.
Oh, there you go.
I've coached here.
This is,
Yeah. It's just not jury rigged.
So,
yeah. So yeah, you know the baseball. So this is one of those ones where I'm practicing opening it back up to the public in this case.
no, I like that. Appreciate it.
So, and off we go. So given that there's no further questions and that there's no further discussion, I would call for a vote. All in favor of the motion to spend not exceed 67,505 on these three sports related items, please say aye.
Aye.
Tim, was that a yes?
Aye.
Aye. And I would also vote to approve those. There we go. Thank you very much, everybody, on that. So that's gym equipment. And now the next thing on the agenda, this is a 7E fund request, which is for field maintenance. And this one has not as yet been discussed, and it's on the agenda. And I would like to have somebody explain to me what we're looking at here. I think it's pretty straightforward. Can I go to Dave Schilling on that?
Okay. This is pretty much just annual field maintenance costs, nothing out of the ordinary. Diamond Turf comes in and does one round spring, summer, and another round in the fall. The only thing that's different on there is repainting the dugouts, which is like $1,000 extra. Marvin Pritchard has, as always, put his stamp of approval on this. For newcomers to the board, Marvin Pritchard, who is very connected with the 70 Fund, and, stems from his family, has put in almost a full-time, I would say a full-time job of a year of volunteer work in our fields.
It's me. It's actually me.
Okay, cool.
So can I stop you? And we have two new board members who may not understand what the 70 Fund is.
Yes.
So, you know what it is?
I do.
You're sporty, she's sporty, she knows what it is. Molly, you have any questions about the 70
I'm gonna
Fund?
turn it over to Dave Toll to answer that, because he's got it right up the tip of his tongue.
Paul and Mary and 70 were pillars of the community. And when Marion passed away, she left, I believe, $475,000. The interest could be spent on maintenance improvement enhancements of the school's athletic fields and facilities. So we have a lot of money that can be used. And I mean, you're just,
yeah,
I would, it would scare you if I could come up with a real number, but you know, there's more than enough money to cover this.
There's over $600,000 in the fund right now. So we only touch the interest, and we don't even near touching the full year's interest for a year. It's really
But
And
it is-
noteworthy, there's a similar endowment that went to the town for some similar sort of maintenance stuff, where they, like in perpetuity, they've helped the town with this, these are endowments, and so they, the town. So this is a case where they didn't, I think they said at one point they saw the condition of the fields, and they wanted the children going forward to not have to have better facilities. Okay.
And just the restrictions are on the, it's too bad you can't be more creative, but if you do, you know, you have to do it exactly with the intention the endowment was placed, or the whole thing can be taken away.
Right, his meaning is that's outdoor, that was outdoor, what we just talked about was indoor, and this is for outdoor stuff.
And only the interest can be used. It can't be.
You can't stand it up.
So
So
220.
So yeah, that's 70 Fund in a nutshell. We do a couple of these requests every year. Sometimes there are bigger requests that come from the 70 Fund. For example, the dugouts last year, the block dugouts that are on the field here at the school came out of that. So Marvin and Sean McNamara and Randy all got together and reviewed this one. That's what they gave us.
Okay, so what we're looking at here, if you all look at the back, the very back page of your packets, what we're looking at here is a $22,945.50 spend. And it's for painting, for field maintenance, and for fall field maintenance. So does anybody have any questions about the numbers? And would anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve expenditure of 70 funds not to exceed $22,945.50 for spring, summer field maintenance, preparation, staining of 2 baseball dugouts, and summer field, fall field maintenance.
Excellent, thank you. And can I get a second on that? Second from Melissa. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Now, I think on this one, this is not taxpayer money. This is an endowment. So this one, I'm out of it. I think that's where
It's paid for. Thank you. This is 70.
Right, no offense to the public, but I think on this one is this is not your money. And so this is, and so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna say, does anybody else on the board have any questions? Or does anybody, and hearing none, I'd like to call the question. All in favor of this 70 fund request as moved by Dave Toll, please say aye.
Aye.
You're good, Em? Okay, that's 4, and I'm 5, aye as well. Okay, awesome, thank you. That's that. Okay. The next one is, what we're looking here is we're looking at board education. And again, this is because we're new, and this is because I got a question from Melissa, and I got a question from Dave, and I got a question from Molly. And a lot of the questions went right back to the handbook. And so I wanted to talk about the student family handbook, and this one is accessible. We all sitting around and looked at it. And I just wanted to talk about, I wrote this up. I don't have to share my screen on this, but I got to find my words so that I can speak more intelligently. The student and family handbook is, I'll find that. Just give me a second to find what I wrote down. So the student and family handbook that we all looked at is 100% an operational document. And so it is informed by board policies, but it is written by the administration to, and it's a compact with the parents to forward the education of the students. And so in a lot of places, the policies inform what's written. And then in some places, it's the administration that is able to fill in the rest of this, fill in the blanks and set forth the guidelines and the behavior stuff. And so what I want to tell the board members is often, if you get questions from the community, when you get a question from the community and you're there, you are a person and they are a person, and often you'll find the answer to your question in the handbook. And it's one of the first places that you want to check operations of the school, and you direct them back. And this is the same thing we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, is that when you deal with a person, you want to direct them to on the correct pathway to get the question answered. And the first place to look is here, because often you're directing them back to administration or operations, or even the teacher. So it might start with the teacher, it might start with the administrator. And then I would encourage everybody here, especially the two new ones, to, if you have a question, open a dialogue with the administration, with the administrators. Hit them with an email. Let them know that you have a question and you'd like it answered, and then they'll answer it. And that was what I wanted to stress with the handbook, and I wanted to open up the questions if anybody had any questions about the handbook. And if you don't, that's fine. And that's, if I say if you have any questions, you have any questions, it's fine not to have it. But I'm trying to figure out where we can go with policies and with everything to make sure that you guys have the best information to move forward. So that's all this was about. And if nobody has any questions, then I'm happy to move on, but I don't know if Mike's here yet. So maybe should I stall? Dave, Mark? Is Mike Konchesky here yet?
While he's here, I'm trying to get him
Should I
promoted
grandstand?
to panel.
No. Okay.
Huh?
He's here? I was gonna grandstand if I needed to.
No, I'm having a little trouble getting him. Hang on a second.
Okay, oh, and so before we close it out, the new principal will have a say in this, in the spring. So Larry, this is, we got a handbook here. So thanks for coming and listening to this discussion.
Okay, Michael's on now.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next item on the agenda then. The next item on the agenda is an FY22 update, and we're gonna talk about a tax anticipation. And I'll turn it over to Mark, or I'm gonna go right to Michael.
Yeah, Michael's gonna talk, but Mike, why don't you let me put up why don't you let me share my screen with the financial report on it, and then you can talk to it? Does that work for you, Mike?
Sure. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah. So you should
Yes.
all,
Yes, Michael, yes.
you should all be able to see this report now. Is that, I can make it just a little bit bigger.
Yep.
That's about it.
perfect.
We're gonna run out. Okay.
Yep, that's perfect. So this first page is just revenues, guys. I'm just letting you know we're on track to hit the revenues. You know, we've got another 450,000. That 451 you see there near the bottom third of that page. That just came in on Friday. That's the ed spending money, the subsidy money the state gives the town of Danville. So we're on track to get very close to that revenue number. Other items are still in process. We'll collect that hopefully before the end of the year. So revenue's on track. If you go all the way, I think it's to page either 4 or 5, Mark, without going through all of this, because again, the year's not over yet. Obviously, we still have expenses that were coming through. I wanted to show people this from an expense standpoint. You can see that, you know, we're on track from an expense standpoint when you say budget versus where we are year to date. And then the encumbrance, some of the encumbrances are a little over encumbered, and we're gonna work through that. Yeah, you can see how it's, you know, 1.109 encumbered versus a remaining balance of $1,076,000. So, I mean, we're right there. I'm not worried about, you know, Danville being over budget right now. Plus, the assessment true-ups are not done yet. And if, you know, I know the SU is well under budget, so I don't think we've spent all the money we expected to. Basically, a lot of open positions that just didn't get filled. So what I'm trying to say is that I feel good that Danville's on track for yet another successful school year from a financial perspective. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, you know, I won't have final numbers till sometime around, or better numbers until sometime around probably late July or mid-August, when the books start to close, the dust settles, the encumbrances are cleared, and the assessment true-ups are completed.
I would just share too, to back that up, for folks who are not used to seeing encumbrances. A lot of times, that number looks high at this point of the year because of open purchase orders. You have a purchase order for something that we didn't actually buy, but the PO was opened. Those add up really fast. So that's sometimes when you see a number like that. So once this purchase order is closed out, that number drops pretty quickly.
That's a great point, David. Great point. I would say there's anywhere between a 50 and 100,000 probably over encumbered. So I'd say, you know, a little less than 10% is probably over encumbered in this thing. So I feel good that what you just said is true.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Michael on this? The numbers get busy here at this point. Okay. And the question I thought of was whether food costs were too high, but it's tough to tell when the food will get reimbursed. But do you have any supply chain issues or anything like that, where you're seeing raised costs on things? I don't know the question.
Is that question for me, Clayton?
Yes. Have you heard it?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some inflation and supply chain issues. I mean, paper cost is higher than it's ever been. Just getting reams of paper from WB Mason. You know, of course, we are seeing it, but not enough to truly drive this budget in a deficit position, at least that I can tell right now. It's still early. Obviously, the year's not over. You know, food service, I think, is going to be fine as well. A lot of it because we are getting some heavy subsidies and reimbursements from the state. That's going to end at the end of this year. We go back to a normal model, pre-pandemic, starting next year. So next year will be an interesting, you know, dynamic and seeing how it unfolds. But I think it's too early to say anything right now.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that all done, the second part of this is the tax anticipation note. And is that, am I to Michael again?
Yeah.
Michael,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Yeah, you know, just to clarify this is important. You know, I believe as part of the warning of the budget, you know, you already get permission from the voters to obtain a TAN. So this discussion is just to let you know that, I mean, as far as I think our fiduciary responsibility, Mark and I in the office, is to make sure that we're always looking out for the best interests of all of our school districts. So every year, you know, I send out the bid from 4 different banks. And this year was 4. Last year, I think I did 3. Just to make sure that we're getting the best option for you guys, okay? And all the bidders, with the exception of Mascoma, provided 2 options. Mascoma decided only to provide a bid on the fixed line, think of it like a line of credit, where you borrow what you need, you pay it back right away when you don't need it, and you don't carry the note. You The other banks did both. They did the fixed line or the line of credit, but they also provided what I call a traditional TAN with an investment option. Okay. And in comparison to this, it's very clear, Community Bank clearly is not competitive. That's true with all of our districts. They came in high on the TAN rate, low on the interest income, and that's a double whammy. So they were really, I really didn't even look at them more than a second other than to put it on the sheet. It really came down again, just like last year, between Passumpsic and Union. And they're both very close, very competitive offers. I think the difference is really nominal. And because of that, I firmly believe the customer service we get from Passumpsic is worth staying with them. They've been outstanding. They've come to our rescue on multiple occasions, maybe not so much with Danville, but definitely with 3 of our other districts. When I was in a real pinch, these guys stepped up and did things other banks couldn't get out of their own way to do. So my opinion and recommendation is to this board that we stay with Passumpsic. They've earned the right to have our business, and they're incredibly competitive with the market.
Yeah, if I could just add something to that in terms of, because they actually have done some things for Danville back when we were trying to figure out how to do the fix the ventilation system in the school the fall before last. We actually went through the process of securing we thought we were going to have to borrow money to pay for that, and this was before we got a substantial grant from Efficiency Vermont that basically covered the whole project. And Passumpsic just, they basically fell all over themselves to make this work for Danville School at the time. In the end, we did not actually have to execute the loan. We never did take the money from Passumpsic, so there was never any cost to us to do it. But in my mind, it's reflective of, I think, of Passumpsic seeing themselves as, being a partner to the school community. I mean, they're your next door neighbor almost, except for the auto repair shop in between. And they really care about not just Danville, but the other 7 schools in the district. And Passumpsic doesn't really operate down in Washington County like they do in Caledonia County. They have a limited reach out there, but they've been just as kind and supportive for Cabot and Twinfield as they are for the 5 schools in Caledonia County. So
that's a great point, Mark, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I had forgotten about that. They tripped over themselves on short notice to put that loan together when the other 2 banks couldn't even put an offer in. So
right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We just didn't take advantage of that wonderful thing. You're right, but
they never made a nickel off of it.
No,
right?
they spent time preparing all those documents, getting their internal approvals. You're absolutely spot on. Passumpsic really is so impressive when it comes to just customer centricity and getting things done timely and always looking out for the best interest of their customers. I'm very impressed. I'm a big fan of Passumpsic as a result.
So I definitely remember that. I remember our crisis. I remember our situation with the air handlers, and that Passumpsic was who was going to save us. They were the people that came to our aid when we needed it the most. So I remember that as well, and I would be on board with Passumpsic as well. And so in this instance, Mark and Michael, we need to make a motion to approve.
Nope.
Do we need to make a motion at all? No.
Nope.
We
No,
Just
because you're
transparency.
We are being
transparency.
we're being advised that you guys are acting on the will of the voters to execute a tax appreciation.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to note it duly.
Yep.
And thank
Yep. That was just for transparency. I just want you guys to know that we're doing our job like you're paying us to do.
All right. That's what I needed. Okay.
Good.
Any questions for any on that before I move on? All right, moving on to other business. Does anybody have any other business that they have on board? Mark, did you say something?
No, I was going to say, if we don't need Mike anymore, I know he just got home from baseball practice. So.
Oh, sure, Mike.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for letting me
about your
speak.
life. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, guys.
I just snuck out. All right. So, is there any other business? No other business. Do I have any public input? All right. Hi, Allison.
Hello again. I just had a
All right, hold on.
question. Oh, sorry,
You have to
yes.
say I'm Allison. You have to say-
Allison Despath.
So Allison, we're gonna go, Allison Despathi, I would like to open this up to public comment, and I'll give Allison 3 minutes for a public comment. Give me a second to set my clock here.
Yep. Allison Despath,
That's kind of-
public comment.
That way, there's a stopwatch over. That's a stopwatch. Okay, please.
Okay, and it might be just possibly direction as to who to talk to and request this information from. I've been meaning to email, but I haven't gotten to it. Again, I have a son who would be a sophomore next year. My older son did go here. I'd love for my other son to go here, but there's a few things I've been concerned about. I'm just wondering. And I obviously believe you guys are doing an awesome job. And there's a lot of really great teachers here. Miles had an incredible experience. There's a lot of really good teachers, even though he hasn't really been here the past year or so. But basically, one of my concerns is obviously I want to send my kids here for education. I feel that they can get a really good education here. I know that Kingdom East, Newark School in particular, they were sending home some of the unicorn, the gender unicorn piece, which I am totally open and supportive to wherever everyone's landing. That's their choice, it's their thing. I fully respect that. I just don't want my child to be in a school where education time is spent on that. And so I don't know where you guys as a school are landing and who could best direct me to curriculum around this, or if that's being implemented or not. But it is, if my son comes here, I want him to be educated in subjects. I can work on that stuff with him. And I know that you have wonderful guidance counselors such as Simon Fisher, who's been amazing. And that if there were concerns or issues that children could connect with him, they could connect with families. I know you guys are trying to support a very inclusive environment for everyone, which is amazing and awesome and how it should be. I just personally would want to ensure that there's not time in classes spent on these issues, which I feel should be dealt with personally with family, with the guidance counselor, possibly if that needs to happen, versus in the school. So direction on that would be awesome.
Simon Fisher and I would be happy to talk.
Okay, perfect. So setting up a time. Okay, perfect.
Simon,
Okay,
he's out this week. We'll be back next week.
okay, that's awesome. Then I'll make that happen.
Yep,
And the only other last thing is, have you guys done the gender unicorn piece?
There's no unicorn that's been handed out.
That was just at
You
Newark.
know, there have been some gender conversations in the classroom. Some people have been more comfortable with them, and sometimes those have been issues that have been addressed with individual teachers.
Yeah,
But all in all, I think we have, we want our school council to be part of the process.
yeah.
And,
And to me, I
Yeah,
just wanted to ensure that like class time is spent on education versus something along those lines, which I think can be dealt with outside of school or otherwise, as long as it's an inclusive environment for everybody.
Thank you for
So,
that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, hearing none, I'm looking at future agenda items. Tim, is it okay if I put public comment policy back on and we discuss it at the next meeting? So public comment policy. I'm gonna leave the building plan on as well, since we don't know what we're gonna have, and it'll be open, and we can probably, if we don't have any further information, we can drop that off. But I think that we're probably gonna have people with questions, and we wanna welcome them in like we did tonight. Past that, I have, anything else, Tim?
Well, I guess can we separate out the norms versus the policy?
Okay, so you want to have two separate discussions, one on meeting norms and then one on public comment policy? So
Yeah,
we have
I
two
think
separate
that's-
agenda items.
That's where I got bogged down with of that norms piece. I just think that's the separate conversation.
Okay. All right, so we have those two things, and then I think that's all we have for now.
We've got a hand up from Sarah.
Sarah's
Oh,
got her
sorry,
hand
sorry.
up.
I didn't see it. You're in a yellow room with a yellow hand.
I know, sorry. What about any new hire approvals should go on?
Yeah.
Just for wherever we're at, that way they're on and we make sure it's warned.
Dave the host shut down his computer, and so we're all gonna hang on for a second while he loads back up the one that talks. But I think you can talk, try talking right now. Sarah, you're muted?
Yes, I am, but I couldn't hear you anyway.
Okay. so
I can hear Sarah.
Can you,
There's feedback, but we can still hear you just fine.
so I gotta mute mine fast whenever Dave gets back up. So what was your agenda item?
We need to put new hires approval on there.
Excellent. New hires, okay?
Why does yours echo?
All right. Is there anything else to add to future agenda items? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn. That was a motion to adjourn from Dave Toll. Can I get a second? I'll take it from in the room. It's from Melissa. All in favor of adjourning this meeting? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Meeting adjourned.